Hello, everybody. Thank you for joining us for another episode on Brunch with Purpose with Brian, myself, and Omar. How are you guys doing today?
We're doing great, Asia. Had a very phenomenal morning. Woke up pretty early and had spent.
I saw you online so early, and I thought I'm the only crazy morning person.
Yeah, we had some great news today. We had one of my very close friends just had a baby boy, and just completely transformed my morning. It's amazing how great it feels when you when a new life comes to this world. Just like it's an amazing feeling.
Yeah, we got the picture this morning, Brian, and it's the cutest thing ever.
Yeah. Oh,
How was your morning, Brian? How are you doing?
I'm doing very good. Yeah, started the morning off fine. I'm actually on another all day training. So I was on for an hour. Now I'm with you guys, and then I'm going to pop back on there. It's in the realm of investing and financial stuff and that. So that's what I'll be going back to after this. I'm just trying to get me live at the same time and see if it's working or not.
Yes, yes. We're figuring out this technology. One day we're gonna have it like to the T. I'm gonna switch to my headset here because I share a place with my partner, and sometimes he's loud and I'm loud.
Right.
That's your Princess Leia look.
Okay, awesome. This it makes me more focused on you because there's just external noises. Amazing. So I know that we have a really juicy topic that's usually on most people's thought process during times like that, but really in general, anxiety and stress is part of our day-to-day life as humans, and we need to learn what it is and how to cope with it. And today we're going to be focusing on sharing our stories and stories that we deal with clients when it comes to things like that. um, are you guys excited to share this topic with me?
I'm super excited about this topic. Yes, and I'm really excited to see what you and Brian have to share too.
Yeah, absolutely. So let's start by differentiating anxiety from stress, because often these words are interchangeable, or people use them interchangeably rather, but they're very different. Do you guys know the difference between stress and anxiety?
I don't think I formally know the difference. I might have my own opinions, but let's hear what are the formal definitions around it.
So essentially, stress is driven by external circumstances that contribute to an increased level of fear or fight or flight type of responses, and anxiety are internal. So the stress is often stimulated by something that external stimuli, like the COVID-19, is creating stress because it's something that's happening around us in the world and we're responding to it. But anxiety is happening internally from our perceived fear of what may happen in the future. And that's why they're usually interchangeable, because one feeds the other. Stress feeds anxiety, anxiety feeds stress. It's very interchangeable that way, but the source of the stimuli is the difference.
That makes a ton of sense. So yesterday I had to go out. I had to go to the bank. And at the bank, I was standing outside. There's a bunch of people. You're waiting to get into the branch. So that the stress is this is taking longer in my day. There's people going in and out of the bank. I don't know their situation. But what's going on in my head, especially after I'm done at the bank, if I'm still thinking about it, that's the anxiety piece. That's what I get from what you're sharing here, Seal. Is that right?
That's right. Yeah,
Awesome.
that puts things in perspective. Let's talk about the definition of anxiety before we dig into what can be some coping mechanisms, techniques, and tips to deal with it. Because we need to deal with it. It's not something you just overcome overnight. It's going to continuously happen in your life. Different things are going to bring out different levels and intensities of anxiety. And it's just a matter of knowing how to cope with it and deal with it rather than pretend it's not there or something you need to heal from. That's not how it works with this type of emotion per se. But from your experience with anxiety, how would you define it?
See, I'll tell you how I see anxiety.
Yeah.
The
Or rather, a better question is how does it show up in your life? Not necessarily how you define it clinically, but how does it show up in your life?
I'll tell you how I perceive it,
Yeah.
and I'll tell you how it shows up in my life as well. How I perceive stress or anxiety, I see it more as pain and suffering. I think that pain would be something that would cause pain, but you feel like you can control it, or you feel like you have a solution to it, or you feel like you have hope to resolve it. Suffering is when you believe in your subconscious, or in your deeper, mentally believe that there is no hope, or that there's no solution. And I think that's where my anxiety starts to stem from. As soon as I associate no hope, or I start associating suffering, I start to experience anxiety, and which is that lingering feeling that you know um, it's a belief more than a stimulus, or a feeling. And yeah, that's how I associate it. And how it's
So before you tell me how it shows up in your life, I just want to talk a little bit about that.
yeah.
What struck me about your the perception of anxiety in your life is how you associated it with pain and suffering. And these are big words, and these are actually like pain and suffering is almost an extreme form of negative emotion, when in reality anxiety could also be a form of excitement and joy, and a form of something you're actually looking forward to, but it may be an overwhelming thing. So often people associate anxiety with something negative, which is why when they start experiencing it becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy, because you perceive it to be something negative, when in reality it could also be something you're totally over the moon joyful about, and it's still causing you anxiety as well. So I was just very interested in the fact that you chose, and it's not like you chose mildly negative words. Pain and suffering are pretty dense, are pretty heavy. So I was just struck by that. And now I kind of have an anticipation to how it shows up in your life based on your description. But tell me, how does it show up in your life?
It shows up in my life when I feel like either I've been attempting multiple times something, and I haven't been able to succeed, and then I start to feel anxious, and I start to feel that anxiety. It's very interesting how you put a spin on it, and yes, you're right. There's absolutely a positive side to anxiety, feeling anxious and excitement. Um, and it's interesting how I've only looked at the negative side of it. The positive side shows up um, when I am unsure if I am going to be able to fulfill uh, the thing that I want to fulfill to the standard that I want to fulfill. That's when I feel anxious. And it could be excitement, but at the same time, it's a negative feeling. It's that butterfly inside your body where you feel like can I not? Am I gonna suck, or am I gonna do a really good job? So I think that's the negative. But how do you spin it into a positive? I mean, that negative feeling does push you to get out of your comfort zone. I guess that's the positive side of it, right?
We'll get to that soon, but I'm interested in hearing Brian's perception of anxiety, and then we'll dig deeper into how it can be perceived in a positive manner, or at least treated as such. But Brian, let's hear your thoughts about that.
Yeah, thanks, Cecile. So I actually used to suffer from, I wouldn't call it extreme, but low level anxiety a lot when I was younger, in like my late 20s. And, by doing some exploration and talking to some people and even going to see a professional about it, what I really realized is, for me, anxiety boils down to either fretting about the past. So I can remember walking around, if I was walking to work or riding the bus or at the gym, I would be recycling conversations in my head, things that had happened in the past, but I didn't feel like I had really done it as well as I should have, or what I would have said, or prepare, you know, like all this sort of stuff. So I was constantly recycling old conversations and trying to fix them in my mind or justify them or whatever. And that would cause me a low level anxiety. Or I was fretting about things in the future. I was projecting out, you know, more like what Omar was talking about. Like, I'm getting ready for this big meeting at work, or I have to talk with my girlfriend this weekend about something that I thought was going to be difficult, or, you know, just all these sorts of things. And so it was always that for me, worrying about the past, or wishing I could correct the past, and then fretting about the future. And it's funny because I remember a quote that that I came across that I've had this quote for like more than 30 years, and it still helps to this day. And the quote was, I have worried about a great many things in my life, a tiny few of which have actually come to pass.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And that was just so key to me on like how many of these things that I'm worrying about, fretting about, anticipating, never actually show up in my life. Like a tiny percentage of them show up in my life. And that was really, on the one hand, it was kind of empowering of like, oh, well then why am I so worried about all this stuff, right? So that's really my definition and how it showed up for me.
An interesting thing that I want to add as well, and I kind of made that realization when I listening to you, Brian. I remember also in my university days when I was going through university, I remember life being pretty good. You know, I was getting good grades. I was working. There wasn't a lot of negative things going on in my life, but for some reason, I was probably in my lowest point. When everything was right, I was feeling wrong. And I remember times in my life where everything was wrong, when the world was crumbling, when everything was falling apart, and I was feeling so right. I was feeling so strong. And I am so excited to hear what Asil you have to say about this topic. I think we chose a very interesting topic that a lot of people can learn a lot from. And I'm very excited to see you know, what you guys have, what you've studied, what you've practiced, what you've learned over the years. But it's a very interesting switch that you just, thank you, Brian, for bringing that into my attention.
I actually want to comment on a word you said. I don't understand what you mean when you say I was feeling wrong. And this is the categorization that we as humans fall and trap for when we start labeling our feelings as right or wrong. Like when you start associating the feeling of guilt with the feeling of when you're sad or angry or just not motivated or whatever these wrong feelings are. The most beautiful thing about therapy and the most humbling experience for me so far is learning how to embrace every single emotion and just accepting it as is, because every single thing we experience is here to teach us something. It's here with a message. Brian, thank you for recommending the movie Inside Out, which is a Disney's version of this particular theory, but it's so true. And Omar, it really struck me, I'm not sure how to say that word. Struck me, there you go. I'm like, striked is not the word, struck me. And I'd love for you to expand a little bit on that, because that's where further anxiety is heightened when you start labeling your emotions as wrong. But tell me a little bit about that. What does a wrong feeling sound like for you?
It wasn't a wrong feeling. I felt wrong. I believed in my mind that I wasn't good enough.
You weren't what?
Good enough.
Good enough. Okay.
So, and everything was easy. Life was easy. You know, nothing's easy, but like it was easier than other parts of my life. And you're right. And you know, it's very interesting to have crossed paths with you, Asil, because I think your I came from a childhood where I was taught that a man should always be standing on their feet, regardless how difficult the situation is. I came from a background where, you know, you can push through anything. You just have to focus and you just go through any kind of pain. You know, you numb ourselves as men. A lot of men these days, we don't realize many years into our adolescence that we've become used to numbing ourselves. And so a lot of what you're saying to me is foreign because I haven't been introduced to this. I mean, I hear a lot about it now because of our friendship, but um, embracing every emotion that you have in the present is a very foreign subject to me. And I treat pain in a very different way, where I treat pain as it's there, I need to push through it, and then it goes away. And so it's very interesting to hear you say that. But what I meant by everything was wrong, definitely, Brian, yeah, I'll pass it on to you, is that I just felt like weak. I felt like I was unworthy of the good that I was getting. I wasn't good enough. Go ahead, Brian.
I was just going to say that when I was younger, I had a karate instructor and he used to yell at us, "Make pain your friend."
That sounds like a karate instructor indeed. It's very interesting that you would this conversation because your experience, Omar, is not unique. It's very universal. There's so many cultures, particularly men struggle with it more than women because of this mask of masculinity and what being a man represents or what being a man means. So I've heard this story and this struggle many times actually, and I know that it's worse in men than it is with women to show and display signs of vulnerability and weakness and to have the space to talk about it. So I realize it as something that's foreign, and at the same time, I recognize the readiness in you to explore that space, which is what gives you courage and why I adore you as a friend, because you have this balance between pushing through and wanting to be the strongest and most inspirational person I know. But at the same time, you have that desire to expand your emotional capacity as you go through these things and not just rely on actions to get you through to the other side, but really make the most out of the journey. And that's the balance I try to integrate. It's not the results ultimately that we should keep our eye on. The results are important, but the journey in itself has probably more results within it than the destination we've originally anticipated. And that's the beautiful balance between integrating and having a balance between our mind, our heart, our soul, and starting to bridge the gap between everything. So one of the concepts in the therapy I'm learning, which is Gestalt, it's the concept of here and now. And the way here and now is focused in bringing attention to the present moment and embodying the experience while reflecting on what's happening in your body. And I know that this is a very foreign concept to like most people, including myself when I first started this, because I was so much in my head. I wanted to see formulas, I wanted to see logic, I wanted to see like a proven scientific approach to things that I can just wrap my head around it. And I couldn't understand when the therapist would tell me, so how does this show up in your body, or how are you supporting yourself right now, or I didn't even have the terminology. Like I knew this is my hand and I knew this is my leg, but like I didn't have even terminology to even explain what like I never thought about what's happening in my body right now. Brian, have you ever thought about these things from that concept of integration and showing vulnerability as a man, and how does it show up for you?
As we were talking today, something that I just want to bring this up for a second, and then I'll answer your question, Asil. So, men or women, I mean, I agree with you that there's a culture with men where we tend to just, push things aside. That's definitely that old way. But I would argue that in today's society, it's just as relevant for women. There's a lot of single moms out there, or women that are in charge of the household. They're having to become more masculine oriented, if you will, to survive in today's culture. So they're facing very, very similar things. But what I just stopped to think about in this moment is like, my goodness, okay, we're in a global health pandemic right now, but as we talked about in previous calls, that has created a potentially even larger financial crisis. How many millions and millions of people out there, men and women, have no idea how to, first of all, they don't understand that not being able to provide for their family right now is going to cause them so much stress, because there is outside factors that are affecting them, and anxiety as they try to deal with the emotions around that, what's going to happen in the future. Like right now, we are so embroiled in a financial stress and anxiety place. And most people, like you're saying, don't have the language, don't have the awareness. Nobody's ever talked to them about any of this sort of stuff to even realize that any of this is going on. Like I just became very present while we were talking about the, it's so easy when we talk about the financial stuff to look at like, oh, how's your income doing? And oh, you can apply for these programs and all that. But we so rarely address. Yeah, exactly. We so rarely address the emotions and what's going on and how I might be feeling and all this. And then again, we're in a society where bringing that up and admitting, that, oh, hey, I don't know how I'm going to feed my family next month, and I'm feeling like a failure and I must be wrong, and all this stuff that we're just talking about. Like, holy moly, is this so terribly pertinent and critical and important right now. So I'm so glad we're talking about this, and I hope people are able to connect the dots. Like people might be sitting there going, wow, I'm not stressed, I don't have anxiety. I bet you do. How can you not have it in this situation that we're in right now, right? And then how different people react to it. Going back to your question, I've been lucky enough to have people who have helped me see this sort of stuff. I've been doing meditation for years now, and that's always a big question, is like, where does it show up in your body? And actually, even in my meditation this week, I was amazed of like, until I've got a guided meditation, and until they're like, is there stress in your jaw? And I'd just be like, oh, I'm clamping my jaw right now. What about your shoulders? Oh yeah. And as I went, like, again, just wandering around thinking I was fine, but until somebody presenced me to what was going on in my body, I really had no idea, right? And I think back again, when I was in university, I used to wake up in the morning and my hands would be sore because I'd be clenching my fists all night, worrying about the next exam, the next assignment, the this, the that, the other thing, to the point where like I would wake up in the morning and barely be able to open up my hands. That's where I was, that was the level of stress and anxiety that I was carrying in my body, but there was nobody around to explain this to me or help me understand or any of that sort of stuff. So yeah, it's every day is a new learning about how this all integrates.
So there's a beautiful saying. I'm not sure if it's a quote or something somebody said in my class. The body will never forget what your mind often does. And there's the body stores every single thing that ever happens to us ever since we're born. And some might even argue before, like, because those who believe in reincarnation and intergenerational trauma and things of that nature, your body is not only holding what's happening in your lifetime and since you've been born, but also past experiences, if you believe in that. So, but even if we're talking about this lifetime alone, that's a whole lot of stuff that we are storing in our body memory. And because we're not connected to our bodies usually the way we should be in the mindfulness that we bring to that relationship, that's why it's a foreign territory. Like, we live in our bodies and our bodies are foreign. Like, that for me is a really crazy concept that I started gaining more and more awareness on the more therapeutic training I indulge into. And the interesting thing from what you said as well, Brian, is while people are certainly experiencing financial stress and financial anxiety, the reality of the situation is most financial situations won't kill you. Like, even if you start indulging in catastrophic thinking, like, what if I lose my house? What if if you're living in North America, there are certain type of support systems, like your basic needs somehow, some way will be met. It won't kill you. And I know that in certain cases it will suck, whatever tragedy you may go through, but it's not detrimental to your security in your life. If it's not a life-death situation. However, the stress around it and the anxiety around it is detrimental to your health and will kill you. And there's scientific studies to show that people die from financial stress equivalent to people dying from heart attacks, equivalent to people, smoking 15 cigarettes a day or something like that. And it's ridiculous amount of information to support that, which is what makes this topic fascinating. It's like, how, and this is so intangible in a way. Like, how can this thing that's not tangible have so much control in our lives? And that's why this topic is important, because we need to start recognizing it by connecting to our bodies, by listening to what am I feeling right now? Like, what is really going on in me? And then bringing awareness to, well, why am I feeling this way? And when you bring awareness to this conversation and integrating the emotional and psychological layer to what you're experiencing, then you're able to break through an open space for healing these existing emotions and then cultivating powerful, mindful, and empowering thoughts and feelings to move forward with. That's the beauty of this work.
I've read a book. I don't remember the name of the author. I'll try to find it, but it talks about the 1,000-year-old brain, or our brain, like you said, our bodies retain emotions, even transcending from prior lives, or maybe even if we don't look at the reincarnation, just the life. But there's a belief that, or there's a theory that our brain is thousands of years old, and it starts off with a hunter-gatherer. When the old human used to be faced with a saber-toothed tiger at the time, and that fight or flight would actuate, and they would run for their life. They were running because it was death or life. And our brains, they secrete the same hormones, and we don't know the difference, right? And hence why there's this heaviness that it actually kill you. Yes, financial stress will kill you, and it's because we associate the same kind of fear. We associate the same kind of, it's the same hormone that's being secreted that inevitably, and if you don't know how to deal with that stress and that anxiety, will kill you. Yeah.
It's very interesting. Go ahead, Brian.
Exactly what you were just talking about, Omar, and what you were sharing a minute ago, Asil. Like, it's very easy right now for us to be clear that we're facing a health crisis, and we know what to be scared of or stressed about or feeling anxiety about, right? Like I said, I went to the bank yesterday. I'm wearing a mask. Other people are wearing a mask. Everyone, people are wearing gloves. It's very overt and clear that there is this external threat, this virus that has gone across the world, that I should be protecting myself against. I should be aware of it. There are measures that I can take. But we've talked about this. The financial crisis is actually directly affecting more people, probably 1,000 times as many people, right? The number of sick people in Canada doesn't even compare to the number of people who have applied for income replacement and EI and deferrals on their mortgage. Like, that's in the millions, and there's several thousand people who are currently dealing with COVID-19. So my point in this is, and going back to what Omar said, when you see a saber-toothed tiger, it's clear I should be afraid of that, and it's okay for me, and I'm going to be aware of the fact and turn around and run away. But the financial stress and anxiety, which is not as clear, I don't see it, it's not right out in front of me like that. I don't know that it might be going on for me. It's not something I can turn around and run away from and then get to a place of safety. And talking about it, if I go back to the camp and say, oh my God, today there was a saber-toothed tiger, or oh, I went to the bank and I was afraid of getting COVID-19, people understand that. But I don't see much on the news about people talking about the stress and anxiety of the financial crisis. What's it like to apply to have your mortgage deferred from your bank? What's it like to have to ask the government for income replacement because of, your ability to feed your family has suddenly disappeared and completely out of your control and nothing you can do about it. That business that your parents and your parents' parents ran in downtown Toronto, suddenly you're not allowed to run it. And like, nobody's talking about, what do I do? I can't just put on a mask or wash my hands to deal with the fear, the anxiety about all this sort of stuff, right? It's like a hidden one. And lo and behold, what do we talk about? All those hidden killers, right? Like cancer and diabetes and heart attacks and all that sort of stuff, right? That it's always some hidden thing that we're not aware of. So wow, the dots are just connecting for me today.
I'll mention something that I am so interested and so curious to see. We're talking about all these pains, we're talking about all the suffering, we're talking about death. And our viewers probably are just as interested as I am to know, is there any anxiety management skills? Like what do you suggest what do you suggest for people who are going through this anxiety and they don't know how to control it? What should they do then?
There's tons, and I'll share with you some tips right now, and I'm interested to hear what you currently do in your life to manage the anxiety when you have it. But the severity of the anxiety determines what measure works. So I always suggest for people to consult with a therapist, with a there's few therapies that specialize in anxiety disorder. Gestalt is a great one. CBT, which is cognitive behavioral therapy, is another. So depending on the anxiety disorder you're experiencing and the intensity of it, make sure you consult with a professional to help guide you to certain techniques that would work for you. But I'll share with you certain ones right now, actually. So one of the ones that first is important is called the body scan. Body scan is similar-ish to meditation, but with a focus on the body, and you actually walk through your body from like the head all the way to the toe and then back, and you literally scan every single like inch of your body with an intense awareness of what's happening in that area. And there's lots of different, even if you go on YouTube, you can Google a body scan, a guided body scan, and there's certain instructors there that would guide you through that process to help you bring awareness to what's happening in your body, because your body is holding answers to what you may be experiencing. And the reason this is important is because you want to bring attention to what it is you're experiencing. Is it a perceived level of threat, or is it real threat? Because if it's a real threat, then you need to actually focus on solution-based therapies and brainstorm the right, consult with the right professionals to bring solutions. If for example, Brian is talking about certain people having issues with their mortgages, unable to feed their families, or their businesses are going bankrupt. I mean, these are real scenarios that require action steps and solution-based approaches. However, there are certain people who are not necessarily dealing with that, but they're dealing with the perception of a catastrophe happening without actually having a catastrophe happening. And this is a whole different approach to deal with. So body scan is one. Another one would be called the future self exercise. The future self exercise is similar to like visualizing in a way, but you're actually putting things in perspective of what your ideal future self looks like. What is your future self doing? What are they? What's your ideal day like? How do you spend, like, what's your family situation? What's your health situation? What's your financial situation, etc.? And I would recommend, in a time where heightened anxiety is happening, to rely on visualization tools and visual things that you can actually create versus just writing it down or speaking about it. Because when our neurocortex in the brain is very heightened with levels of stress and anxiety, it responds better to images than it does to words. So maybe creating a vision board, creating things that excite you, and having something like, I actually have my visions board and my values board behind me. And certain times where I'm working and I'm stressed, I just turn and I start looking at the things I'm working towards. And it gives me like an instant calmness. it gives me just perspective that, you know, I have a clear vision of where I'm heading. And you know, start with, you know, even if you don't know what your future holds, start with, go as general as you can. There's nobody who doesn't have at least a general idea, and general could be, I want to be happy. I mean, it is just as simple as that. You can start with whatever general place you can start from, and then as you train your mind to think about the future self exercise in a positive way, then you continue to define and refine that vision, the more practice you bring to it. So that's another tool. Um, and honestly, the third one I would recommend is having space between the impulse and the action. Often enough, when we are um, in a heightened level of anxiety, we tend to just want to act. Like we're human doings more than we are human beings in a lot of cases. And just intentionally and mindfully spreading the time you have between the impulse and the action creates a space for you to think things through, sort out your emotions, and ensure that this action that came to mind is actually the beneficial and the right action for you to do, and not something that's just motivated by fear that you may regret. It's as simple as selling your stocks in a downturn market, or buying this impulsive online shopping thing that you feel would bring you calmness in this moment, or whatever the case may be. So these are three things that come to mind. I have so much more, but I'm interested in hearing what you guys can do in your life right now that you that you utilize to calm down your anxiety when you're experiencing it.
Go ahead,
Whoever
Omar.
wants to go first.
Well, it's you talked about three amazing techniques, and there's a lot that I have in mind to say and share. Uh, but it's simple, it's doable, it's clear. You know, it could be as easy as a vision board. If somebody wants to be happy, maybe put pictures of smiling people, right? They say smiles are very contagious, and just imagine looking at smiles every time you're feeling down, or like scanning your body. I mean, I personally, when I'm going, it's very interesting. I'm just thinking about these things as we talk. Sometimes when I'm going through a very stressful time and I'm very focused on my work, or maybe something's wrong and it's really weighing me down, and I feel pain on my shoulders, physical pain in my shoulders. And you start thinking, like back in the day, they used to say he has the weight of the shoulders on his back. Interesting, right? Very interesting to think that. And here's the crazy part though, is that pain in my shoulders at times changes the structure of my body and creates pain in my shoulders. You know what I mean? Like it goes from the top here, and actually, and it's not that I go to the gym and I feel pain here. It's I get stressed and I feel pain here. It's very interesting to see how strong of an impact that could do to a your physiology. And I start to think that when I'm stressed out, one of the things that I do is I change my physiology. I assume the structure or the shape that I want to be, and all of a sudden it's the reverse of what you're saying. It's how your emotions affect your physiology, but your physiology has the same ability to affect your emotions. And so that's one of the things that I do. I just there's a certain trigger, a stand, a structure, or a certain like a action that reminds me of times in my past where I was very prosperous, strong, courageous, and when I'm in lack of these emotions, I can channel back to that point, and I can get these emotions back to reinforce me. Yeah, it's very interesting. I want to hear about Brian. What do you do, Brian?
You know what? Combinations of what you're talking about, Omar, what you were sharing, Asil. I may not have had the some of the names for them, but probably the biggest thing, like I said, you know, when I was younger, this was quite a challenge for me. The biggest thing I learned then when I did an exploration was to separate. In most cases, I was worrying about something that was not in my control, and then I was just sitting and worrying about it. So a great example of that is the weather, right? Let's say I had something planned, a barbecue planned for the weekend, and people were coming over, and I'm sitting there and worrying about the weather, which is something that I have no control over whatsoever, right? So I would worry about a lot of those types of things. And then what I was taught was, like, what a useless waste of time this is, right? I mean, here I am using up energy, and then I'm wondering why I'm tired at the end of the day, or stressed, or my body is all tense, like you're talking about, Omar, and sore neck and sore shoulders, worrying about something that I can't do anything about. So what I really try to do now is, okay, what is the thing that I don't have control over? Great, I'm going to stop worrying about that. What do I have control over? And is there some sort of action that I can take around that? So like Asil said, not that instant action, like just an immediate reaction to something, but actually sitting and figuring out what is a response that I could do that would actually help me. So if I know I'm going to have a barbecue and a bunch of people are coming over and I don't know what the weather is like, I make sure that I have a plan B. So I have a kitchen party planned, or I rent a tent that I can put in the backyard that everybody can go under if it starts to rain, right? So now I'm focusing on something that is in my control, and then I start to take action. And 99 times out of 100, that makes me feel better immediately. The anxiety and the stress immediately starts to dissipate, because now I've got something to do and apply my mind to. I'm problem solving, and I'm actually fixing, in a way, the thing that I don't have any control over by having a plan B or whatever. Now, sometimes there's some things that I cannot do anything about, right? I cannot do anything about when we're going to be able to come out of physical distancing and start to get back to normal. I have no control over that. But there again, I try to go, well, what do I have control over in my life? Oh, I can do this. I can start some investing. Maybe there's a new business opportunity, right? All those types of things. So that's probably the biggest one, is that. From Eckhart Tolle, I read a bunch of his books. One of the things that he talked about is in the now. In other words, in what is really going on right now in this situation, 99 times out of 100, there actually is no problem in the now, right? It's always some future anticipation of something where the problem lies, right? What's going to happen in 3 hours from now, tomorrow, a week from now. But in the now, I don't really have a problem, unless there actually is a saber-toothed tiger standing there staring at me right now. What am I worried? If I'm dreaming about saber-toothed tigers in the future, there is no saber-toothed tiger in front of me right now. So why am I worrying about it, right? And by the way, I would not recommend a body scan if you're facing a saber-toothed tiger. That's not a great for that. But so that's another thing, is bringing myself into the now and going like, oh, do I have a problem right now? Am I out of money? No. Am I not bringing in any money? No, I actually do have clients and I have new things that I can do. So why am I worrying about a financial calamity if right now I'm not out of money? My bank account isn't empty, all those types of things, right? So it's bringing myself into the present moment. Exercise is a big one for me as well. And I was mentioning to you guys, I started this new program with this woman. Here's a great example. She ran a studio in Toronto, right? And then all of a sudden lockdown hit and she can't have her studio. She instantly pivoted and has started doing online classes, fitness classes for people. And she's even doing them for free right now. And then, if you enjoy it and stick with it, then you can pay her in the future. And so I'm getting to do physical exercise and then, supporting this person's business, possibly bringing her more people. So, that was something, if I exercise and get my body moving, again, the stress, the anxiety starts to go out of it. And again, that's something in my control, right? So those are some of my basic go-tos.
Yeah, I actually have two things to add. Omar, you want to say something?
I wanted to mention something regarding what Brian said. It's probably the most common thing that people experience, is that fear of the unknown and constantly, in the now, like as you had mentioned with Eckhart Tolle. I call that phenomenon, and I see it so often with people that I talk to. I call it the death by 1,000 stabs. You know what I mean? It's like, stab number 1, what if this happens? Stab number 2, but what if this happens? And stab number 3, and you're just constantly going through so much pain and so much suffering because you're constantly stabbing yourself, psychologically speaking, without anything happening, right? And It's very, very common. And the other thing that I mentioned, I have different techniques of how to deal with pain. You talked about a very evolved way of thinking when you start to separate what you have control over from what you don't have control over. And that's not very easy. Should this piss me off? No, I have no control over it. I'm not going to let this piss me off. But when you have pain or when you have anxiety, when things that you do have control over, one thing that I found is very important is journaling, writing them down. As soon as they leave your mind, it's like you have this internal, this peace, internal peace. And I think the reason why is because our minds don't recognize a thought when it goes through it multiple times. So it just keeps on bouncing from place to place. Even though it's going through the same thoughts, it magnifies the problems. It's like, oh, I have so much to do. If you start writing down every thought that comes to your mind, and then one thing that helps me a lot is chunking. So I'd have 15, 20 things that need to be done, but I can then chunk them into 3 or 4. And now I look at 3 or 4 and it's very manageable. So that's for problems that you do have control over, but when it's too much, when it's very, when it's overwhelming.
2 things I wanted to add earlier, and that's making the distinction between embracing the anxiety and just having the need to overcome it because of the discomfort it represents in our lives. And this is very important to understand and to be able to, as you experience the anxiety, just see what are you trying, like what's the response to it here? Because sometimes we may run the risk of wanting this pain that we're experiencing to be over as soon as possible, and therefore when we're experiencing that, we may rush into a solution that we just want to numb our feelings for. So it's a really beautiful, delicate balance between embracing that emotion and seeing what is it here to teach you, and also figuring out how to overcome it so it's not controlling you. And they sound contradictory at some levels, because on one hand you're like, wait, but I'm going to embrace it so it's going to take over me, and then on the other hand was like, okay, but I want to overcome it so it's not taking over me. So it sounds a little bit contradictory, but that's where the delicate balance is. So for example, depending on what you're experiencing, and that's why this is a very personal situation, and it's a case by case scenario, because there's times, for example, where I'm experiencing anxiety or a form of low energy or whatever the case may be, and I may be tempted to want to watch a sad movie because I have feelings that are bottled up and I want to cry, and maybe watching a sad movie is going to help me release these emotions, and once they're released, then I'm able to move forward. Okay, but there's other times where I want to, maybe in a time like that, watch a funny movie instead and just overcome them. But like, these are not logical things that I'm experiencing right now, and I just want to watch something funny so that I can like push through it. You just have to find out, depending on the scenarios you're experiencing, and I'm using the funny versus sad movie as an analogy. It's obviously different things you're gonna do here. Sad movie represents embracing the emotion. Funny movie represents overcoming them, because you're changing your physiology. So there's times you want to watch a sad movie, and there's times you just want to watch a funny movie. And that goes to show that these are not bad things. That when we're experiencing energy levels that are low, or we're not feeling motivated, or we're just being sad, or we're just feeling stressed, that does not make us a bad human being, and then we just need to get over that as quickly as possible. And I remember, Omar, there's times where I share these things with you, like as you know, you're one of my best friends. I'm like, I'm not feeling myself today. And I should be okay. I mean, I struggle with being okay with it, but I'm practicing that mindfulness more and more. I should be okay not feeling myself every day. And that's part of the journey of being a human. And the second thing I wanted to add is, it's very important, very interesting to me how many times I speak to clients, coaching clients of mine, and they come to the start of the session saying how they have no idea how what they're feeling, or they have no idea what kind of future they're looking to build. They feel very clueless, and I guarantee you that there's lots of clutter sometimes that cloud our judgment about how we perceive certain things. But when you start decompiling and I hate that word, compartmentalizing, um, compartmentalizing the things that you're sort of experiencing, then you start gaining awareness on how much actually you know what you want and how much actually you have an idea of what's going on. But sometimes we just go to that space right away, like, I have no idea what's going on. When in reality, most likely than not, you are actually more aware than you possibly imagine. You just haven't given yourself the space to explore that. And that's why therapy is useful in that sense.
I want to make a request.
Mm-hmm.
Because this topic has been so interesting. I think I speak for the audience when I say that we probably need a second episode of this topic and to go deeper into it. I mean, there's a plethora of things that I'd like to share, and I bet, Brian, you're nodding your head, which means you're feeling the same way. And it's a very, very important topic that can branch out into many different places. But I'm curious, Aseel. We started this conversation with me making a very big realization that anxiety could be a very positive thing. And you told me that I have to wait until I get my answer afterwards. And I haven't gotten my answer yet. So I want us to go full circle here. And you know, let's, before the end of this, I'd like to know what am I supposed to be taking from this realization that you just gave me?
So everything we shared contributes to that answer, actually, because it's really the full awareness that there's no emotion that's good or bad. Emotions are emotions, and they're meant to be embraced regardless what they are. And actually, in my therapy training, they define anxiety as excitement without breathing. So it puts things in perspective that your body is experiencing a level of excitement of some sort. Now, certain excitement could be, and we perceive the word excitement to be a positive thing, when also the word excitement could be you're experiencing a heart rush or something because you saw a saber tooth. What do you call that, Brian? Tiger. Saber-tooth tiger. So that's a form of excitement, by the way. It's just excitement led by fear versus excitement led by something joyful. The body doesn't necessarily know the difference. You're still going to have a fast heart rate or beat and etc. But all that goes to tell you, Omar, that when you're experiencing anxiety is because you're excited about something. Now, that could be a positive thing that you want to see made until fruition, or that could be something negative that you just want to get away from. And either way, you are, I'll get to you in a very quick second, Brian. Either way, you're going to be inspired to figure out what your next steps are. And it's interesting because you reflected on when things were going well in your life, you weren't feeling the greatest. But when things weren't going well in your life, you had some sort of inspiration and motivation, because anxiety brings us this type of inspiration, and in a way it brings us this like it pushes us to figure things through and grow into a better and expansive part of ourselves. Everything we ever experience we experience something, and we experience the polarity of it. Either we want something or we don't want something, and wherever we lie on that stick, it represents a level of expansion for us. So that's why anxiety could be very, very positive if we perceive it to be as such, because it's simply offering us room to grow and become better versions of ourselves.
I have a fantastic example as you were explaining that, Aseel. So I like public speaking, okay? Mm-hmm. And part of it is I've done it for a long time, but right before I'm about to go on stage or talk to an audience, my heart is beating and I'm sweating and I feel this nervousness in my stomach. But for me, that's like a reminder of I'm doing something exciting. I'm doing something exhilarating. This is going to lead to me meeting new people. People are going to come up and talk to me after. That's going to lead to more business. So I choose to have those emotions be a positive and actually motivate me. Whereas most of the population, when they would rather, I mean, the statistics are out there, people are more afraid of public speaking than they are death, right?
Yeah.
They would much rather be the person in the coffin than the one giving the eulogy. So that's a perfect example of what you're talking about, Asil, is it's all the way we choose to look at it and how we perceive it.
Mm-hmm.
I have one small thing that I'd like to add to this. And you've mentioned, it seems like from what you're saying, Brian, it's anything that means to you, anything that's close to your heart or you want, you desire, could make you anxious. So it's a positive thing because it pushes you to grow. And you mentioned when I gave the example of the feeling bad when everything was good, you mentioned that it has to be uh, making peace with your emotions is very important, but there's a balance. It's a balanced psychology of making peace with your emotions. And I think that's a very important thing to remember. My history growing up my father used to my sister, he would say, nobody say anything to her, nobody hurts her feelings because I want her to be a strong woman. And with me, he used to treat me the complete opposite. He'd say, Omar, it doesn't matter. He's a man. I want him to learn to stand back up. Doesn't matter how hard it is. And that may contradict or may go against what the modern way of seeing upbringing of kids. But I think it was important to me. I think there was a good balance between these two ways of thought. And it's not that if anything gives you anxiety, push it away. No. Sometimes you need to push through, but you can't be too hard on yourself. And you need to be in balance. You need to go between these two extremes. I mean, that's what I'm taking from all of this. I know that I wouldn't have gotten to where I am today if I didn't have that desire to want to push through. But I also know that through that journey, I've pushed through so many things that have taken so much from me because I couldn't comprehend and perceive that, it was a very difficult time and people can't always be perfect, or people can't always, you can't hold yourself to that high standard. So
this definitely merits another episode, Omar. We can talk like endlessly
Absolutely.
about this.
I'm
We
already
need to
excited.
wrap up soon because we're
we
passing
do?
the
Come
hour
on.
here.
We can extend for another hour.
we can, our audience can't, but just to wrap up here, it's literally the balance between hustling and aligning. This is between the human being and the human doing. There's lots of people right now trying to wrap their head around, when should you, like, what's that balance, like when do you just relax and when do you hustle? And it's very similar to working through emotions like that, and it's a fascinating journey.
Yes.
Thank you so much for joining me for
Thank you, guys.
another
Thank
amazing
you for this
brunch.
great topic. That was an amazing topic.
Yeah, thank you. I'm so glad we talked about it, and I'm already looking forward to round number 2.
Yes.
Absolutely.
Before I
Have a great day, guys, and I'm
What
gonna
is the next?
stop the
What is the
share.
next topic, Asil? The next topic is going to be. We'll put that on Facebook, but stay tuned. Stay tuned for next Saturday at 11 o'clock. We are very excited to bring in another topic to you. So
Yes.
thank you so much for watching us. Thank you guys for being here with us, and it's always such a pleasure talking to you guys.
Have a great day.